I once again have the immense honor to be able to express my gratitude to the following homies who have supported my podcast financially. It takes, honestly, so much time and so much money to run a podcast. So when people actually make the effort to go and financially contribute to help me pay my incredible editor and VA, who really makes the magic happen in the background, and I don't have to pay for it out of my own pocket, and you guys donate, it is like the coolest feeling in the whole world to know that my work is being supported. So to get to thank you on the podcast is like the best thing ever. If you would like to make a donation, you can go to www.eugeniekruger.com. There is a donate button at the top. I used to have a Patreon and buy me a coffee and everything else, but they actually take quite a lot of commission. So my clever hubby just set it up so you can just go and donate on my website. So just go to eugeniekruger.com, click the donate button at the top. Now, before I read out the donations, I just want to say that when you go to my website and you click the donate button, there is a little space there for you to write down the name that you want me to read out. Now, some people leave this blank. I'm not sure if they're doing that on purpose or because they don't want me to read out their name. So I do email everyone who donates. And then for the ones who don't put their name in there, I do ask them if they want me to read it out or not. But I think sometimes my emails end up in people's spam because I don't hear back from them. So if you have donated to the show and you have not heard your name read out, please do email me at info@eugeniekruger.com because I would love to publicly acknowledge your support. So do use that empty box there when you make the donation to write out the name that you want me to read. Some people put in their first name, some put in their nickname, or they might put in their business name, or they might dedicate the donation to a friend. So whatever you write in that text box, I will read out. Just please keep it family friendly. So without further ado, I would like to thank Sophie. There was only one name in there. Bridget, also just one name. So thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Bridget. Also, Lindsay Cook, who is such an incredible client of mine. Hi, Lindsay. And also Nancy Matter. Then there's also Shannon Tarr. Shannon was clever. She put in some details in here. You can find her at the Silk Road Studios Etsy shop. So you get to have a donation and a free shout out of your business. Woohoo! Clever lady, Shannon. And also Irene Schoenberg. Irene was one of my recent guests who we spoke with about the Oligo scan. So that was so sweet of Irene when I saw the donation come up. Thanks, Irene. I really appreciate it. All of you homies who have donated, thank you so much. You all have a very extra special place in my heart. Today's guest is Therese Cosgrove, who is a homeopath in Ireland and who has also trained in nutritional therapies and Feldenkrais, and she has over 25 years of clinical experience. She is also the academic director and senior lecturer with the Irish School of Homeopathy, and she has conducted a number of different provings in Ireland and internationally. Today, we'll be speaking about Therese's proving of the remedy YinYang, which I am personally very excited to test out in my clinic. I also just want to give a trigger warning for this episode as we do speak a bit about COVID vaccine injuries and suicide. So just letting you know in case it's something that you are sensitive to. So if you would like to work with Therese in person or online, just visit www.theresecosgrove.com. That's ThereseCosgrove.com. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangout. Today we get to speak with Therese Cosgrove from Ireland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eugenie. It's lovely to be here. And I want to say a big thank you to you for all the wonderful work you do at connecting all the homeopaths around the world.
Oh, thank you. I was just joking before we started because with the Irish, you guys tend to like to spell your names one way and pronounce it a different way. So I'm glad that it's just Therese and not too similar to Therese, like how you spell it. So my daughter's got an Irish name. It's Tully and it means mighty people. And funny story to how she got that name, but I have a beautiful Irish friend here in Perth called Elaine. And apparently my daughter's name is supposed to have a father on the U. And she said, Eugenie, you need to have a father on the U. And I can't do a good Irish accent. I'm sure Elaine will forgive me for butchering that. But yeah, I do love the Irish names. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. Your name has come up so many times because Sarah Scott and Nicole McConnon, who's on my team of homeopaths, they've mentioned you, and you've just been popping up everywhere. So it's so exciting that we get to have our chat. We're going to talk about a lot of things, amongst them the remedy YinYang that you proved, and I have dressed appropriately with my black shirt and my little white. I see you have as well. We were both channeling that today, which is really great. But maybe before we get into all the good stuff, and actually I just had to put in there that we had our Bali conference that we've been looking forward to for so long. And I finally got to meet Declan Hammond in person, who has also taught and I think co-founded the Irish School of Homeopathy, where you also teach. Got to meet him in Perth in person. Oh my gosh, what an incredible human. He's just one of a kind. Anyway, before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about your history of how you found homeopathy, because that's always interesting to hear.
Yeah, so looking back, I think natural healing was part of my heritage. My parents were people of the land, and I grew up on a farm. And my dad, who will be 89 this November, has always been great at caring for plants and animals. And my mum was a wonderful woman for her natural cures. So I think I grew up around nature and natural healing. And then when I went to school, I loved physics and chemistry and maths. So I ended up doing a degree in electronic engineering and working in the IT industry. And it was during that time I went to GPs a couple of times with some minor health issues. And what struck me was not only were the treatments not effective, but to my engineering brain, they didn't seem very logical. There didn't seem to be any attempt to identify or address the actual cause. So after a few years working in the computer industry, I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. So I resigned and went traveling. And it was while I was traveling in New Zealand and Indonesia, actually, that I met some very interesting people, had some interesting experiences that I think reconnected me to that magic of nature and natural healing and a more energetic view of the world. So when I came back from my travels, I was thinking about studying traditional Chinese medicine. And just as I was about to enroll on the course, my sister Julie, who had recently come across homeopathy, suggested I take a look at it. So I did a introductory workshop with the Irish School of Homeopathy, which I think is one of the oldest homeopathic schools in the world now. And it was taught by such an inspiring teacher, Anne Callahan, who went on to develop the indigo essences. And on the first day of the workshop, I just knew I was in the right place at the right time, and I needed to know more about this. So I enrolled on the 4-year course with no major plans apart from being curious. And that would have been 27 years ago. And I was very fortunate to have been taught by Anne Walker, who passed away a couple of years ago. And she was a fantastic woman for her therapeutics and her organ supports. She had a really great knowledge.
Well, you're doing something right, because if you've got 26 years of practice behind you, plus working in IT, and you look as good as you do, like something that you're doing is working. So keep doing that, whatever it is.
Filters.
Love it. Keep doing that. It's working. That's amazing. And then you do something else called Feldenkrais. And I'm going to sound so ignorant here. I've heard the word used. I have no idea what it is. What is it? And how do you incorporate that with your homeopathic somehow?
Yeah, so I have an integrative practice. So I offer homeopathy, nutritional therapy, functional medicine, and Feldenkrais. So Feldenkrais, a little bit like nutrition, Feldenkrais was another missing piece of the health puzzle for me. So I was seeing clients who were in chronic pain, recurrent injuries. They wanted to keep active. They wanted to be fit, but they couldn't with this pain and these injuries. And I myself had a chronic injury in my arm and shoulder and neck. And I was quite limited in my activities and I was in pain. And I tried remedies. I had tried acupuncture, osteopathy, various physical therapies, no improvement. And that's what brought me to Feldenkrais. And anyone who's been in chronic pain knows how wonderful it is to be out of that pain and back doing my activities again, including my triturations. I would think of Feldenkrais like homeopathic movement therapy. So in Feldenkrais, we use these small, subtle movements to bring the nervous system's attention to any over-habituated patterns of organization and movement. And in that way, the nervous system can discover or rediscover more comfortable, efficient ways of organizing and moving. And that's individual. Like homeopathy, it's individual to each of us. So these over-habituated patterns could be related to how we were lying in the womb. They could be due to traumas and injuries we've experienced during our lives. It can be related to our mental and emotional state or forced postures. When we release these over-habituated patterns, it can have a very profound effect because our structural organization doesn't just affect our movement. It affects how the organs lie in our body. It is inherently tied into our self-image and our behaviors and how we interact with the world around us. So by releasing these over-habituated patterns, you can see profound changes. And since I've integrated Feldenkrais into my practice, I've just seen some really lovely results where remedies just weren't quite getting there alone. Sometimes I think we need the movement because when we've been injured or traumatized, we can be locked into a certain structural organization and movement pattern. And sometimes the movement is needed to release them.
That sounds very interesting. My poor husband, I always think that he's my guinea pig because I've actually got pretty good health. And he's unfortunately from years of playing rugby and being in scrums, so many scrums, and then a huge car accident in which he almost died. He has such chronic pain that we can manage with certain things, but I'm always looking out for what is something that I can do to help him. And he's always my guinea pig. I send him to so many practitioners. I'm like, go try this. But Feldenkrais is something we've never done before. And that sounds really intriguing. So that's definitely something I'll go try and find somebody local. Is it something that you can do online or is...
Yes.
Oh, you can.
So like homeopathy, you can do it online and in person. So I work with clients online and in person. I've had a case recently, a woman who had a foot and ankle injury. So she had come down onto the side of a metal bar very heavily with her foot. And it was kind of a torsion injury. So she'd stepped down very heavily onto the side of this metal bar and she was in daily pain and couldn't put any weight on the foot, painful to walk. And she had been to various physical therapists without improvement. So she came to me, this was about 8 months down the line, she came to me. So I tried various remedies, including high potency combinations, and it wasn't improving. So I did a Feldenkrais lesson with her, just one. And she rang me a week later and she reported a 90% improvement in the pain. So she'd gone from being in daily pain to having the odd twinge. So, it can have very profound effects. Now, obviously, there would be more complex chronic cases that would require more than one lesson. But it just shows that given the right information, our nervous system can be very intelligent. Because as I said earlier, sometimes when we have an injury or a trauma, the nervous system goes into this overprotective lockdown mode. And it stays in that state. A little bit of an emotional trauma, we can stay in that state even when it's no longer appropriate. So what the specific supple movement of Feldenkrais can do is it can remind the nervous system that it's safe to release that. That it doesn't have to be stuck in that locked down mode again, and it can release that.
That really sounds amazing. You've piqued my interest. I want to go learn more now. And tell me a little bit about the functional medicine side of that. Like, I just remember being so naive when I first started studying homeopathy. And I was like, homeopathy can fix everything. And then as the longer you go in clinical practice, the more you're like, oh, I actually need other modalities too. And just the last year, I've started using OligoScan, which is called photospectrometry. And I swear it feels like my results have just skyrocketed since I've used it. I feel like I was flying blind before, and now I can actually see like exactly what's happening in the body and what's the obstacles to cure. And different homeopaths use different kind of tools. But what was it about functional medicine that and I think you use testing and things like that as well. Like, why do you think that's important?
I suppose initially I was drawn to nutritional therapy. So Shortly after I started my homeopathic practice, I realized that so many people were eating poor quality food and it was affecting their health and how they responded to remedies. So that's when I did a diploma in nutritional therapy and studied functional medicine alongside that. As homeopathy and nutrition are so complementary, when we are eating and nourishing ourselves well, our vitality responds better to remedies. And then homeopathic remedies can help us to make healthy changes more readily. And then the functional medicine allows me to target that more specifically. So I would treat a lot of people with food sensitivities and digestive complaints, autoimmunity like Hashimoto's, diabetes, weight issues. And in addition to the nutritional therapy, we can give both classical homeopathy and specific support to help what we're trying to achieve. So, for example, I would use blood sugar combinations to help balance blood sugar and reduce cravings. I work with about 30 different tissue salts. So Schussler gifted us the 12 tissue salts. But there are also a lot of very important minerals in the body like zinc, like chromium, like vanadium. Another important aspect of nutritional therapy as well is repairing that relationship with food. So many people have a disordered relationship with food, a disordered eating relationship with food. Instead of food being nourishing and joyful, it's a daily battle and a daily challenge. And so repairing that is also an important part of the process. Disordered eating often has an emotional aspect. We might be using food as a substitute for comfort or love or a way of controlling a chaotic world. But I also think disordered eating is partly coming from our highly processed diets. We have additives in food. There's a group called excitotoxins you might have heard of, and they confuse our brain chemistry and disrupt our hormones. And they are specifically put into food to make us keep craving the food. For example, there's two hormones in our body, ghrelin and leptin. So ghrelin is the hormone that tells us when we're hungry, and leptin is the hormone that tells us when we're full. And in the same way that refined diets can produce insulin resistance, they can also produce leptin resistance. So we no longer realize, we no longer recognize when we're full. So I would use a combination of classical homeopathy and flower essences to repair the emotional aspect. And then sarcodes are wonderful at resetting things like neurotransmitters and hormones. And then the functional medicine can help me to target that more specifically. I had a man in recently who was very fatigued, low mood, low immunity. And he sent me on his blood tests and he had high triglycerides, quite high triglycerides, and his testosterone was low. And the GP had said everything else was fine. But when I looked at his blood tests, I could see that the thyroid was sluggish and it was over 2.5. So even though it was well within conventional ranges, that shows the thyroid is sluggish. And of course, low thyroid function will contribute to low mood, fatigue, lowered immunity, high triglycerides, low testosterone. So in that case, then I can target the primary issue, which is the thyroid, rather than trying to put band-aids over the secondary issue. So the functional medicine allows me to target the treatment more effectively.
I've recently just been learning a few more things through the Oligoscan and through another podcast that I listen to called Red Pill Your Health Cast, which I love. And also Mito Life is another one that I listen to quite a lot. And it's made me realize that as homeopaths, there's so much that we need to learn about the functional side of medicine or how our bodies work. Because, for example, it was a huge kind of like aha moment for me when I learned that T4 is converted to T3 in the liver. So it doesn't matter how much like T3 you give somebody, or maybe it's the other way around. If their liver is not working properly, you're not going to be getting good results. So actually just cleaning up their liver so that the liver isn't sluggish and hasn't got that trouble. And that's why sometimes I feel like it doesn't matter how much you ask the person about the trauma from their childhood that could be contributing to the thyroid. Actually, if their liver is congested and they're not converting T4 to active T3, nothing's going to work. Although sometimes you do get that perfect similimum that addresses the trauma and then the thyroid issues heal. But sometimes you just really do need to get down to the nitty gritty of what functionally is happening in your body that's stopping things from working. And I laugh at myself when I think of 10 years ago when I would say to clients, oh, you don't need to get rid of dairy to get rid of your enlarged tonsils, or, oh, no, that's fine. You can keep having dairy with your constipation, or you can keep having dairy with the eczema. Homeopathy is so amazing. It'll do everything. And now I just realize you just don't get good results if you are somebody that's sensitive to dairy and you have constipation. No remedies that I give you, no liver support I give you is going to work unless you remove the dairy. And the same with enlarged tonsils, like these kiddies that just chucking back the milk and the yogurt and stuff, and they have these enlarged tonsils. And I can give them burrata carb or whatever else as much as I want to try and get the tonsils down. If they don't cut out the dairy, it's just not going to go down. So I do think it's important that as homeopaths, we learn the nutritional side and the functional medicine, but it's also hard because you have to start somewhere, right? Like, you have to start, you can't learn everything all at once, and you just have to go through it and pick things up and learn things as you go.
I think even when you start practice, you can be doing wonderful things. And as you said, it's a process. You're not going to know everything you're never going to know everything 10, 20, 30 years down the line. So it's a process. But I do think it is important as homeopaths to recognize the importance of maintaining causes, because Hahnemann spoke about it in the organ. If you look at the aphorisms in the organ, and he actually lists out all of the maintaining causes that we needed to address and he needed to address in his time. So I do think as homeopaths, it's part of what we do is to recognize those things that are blocking the case. And Kent spoke about the importance of homeopaths being able to discern what our remedies can treat and what we need to treat through removing maintaining causes. And particularly thyroid, I think, is one that we need to pay attention to, because I've seen so many cases of recurrent miscarriages where thyroid was missed, where subclinical thyroid was missed. So especially first trimester miscarriages where the thyroid was above 2.5 and they were told their thyroid was okay, and then another miscarriage. So it's really important for the thyroid to be below 2.5 for pregnancy, especially in that first trimester, because the baby is relying on the mum's thyroid hormone for brain development and growth.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so passionate about OligoScan at the moment. I've been doing it for about a year and I've done over 200 scans, and you can pick up subclinical thyroid issues on there. If you have what's called a zinc blockade, which is when there's excess copper, which actually congests the liver, it means the zinc's not being able to absorb in the cells. And then you see really low chromium on the scan combined with low iodine and high antimony. And antimony you get from things like plastics in your environments and things like that. And I'll do a scan and I'll say to a client, do you know that you have thyroid issues? And they'll be like, no, my tests are fine. There's no issue. And so it picks it up subclinically. And I recently had such a heartbreaking case of a client coming. I've said to her since the start of the year, come for an OligoScan, come for an OligoScan. And she didn't until just very recently, and arrived very excited at my clinic to do the scan, and then said, I'm pregnant. I did her scan and she had the worst scan like I've seen in a long time with thyroid dysfunction. And like, as a practitioner, I was, when you just like really stress on the inside, but you keep it on the inside and you stay quiet. I was thinking to myself, she's not going to hold this baby. And sure enough, like a week later, she miscarried. And now, like, it's always just, it's good to know what you're dealing with. Sometimes it's hard to see that you are in a really bad state. But if you know that and you've got the tests and things like that, at least you can do something about it. So now we're working really hard to get her body back into balance before she conceives again. You use blood tests as well. Is there any other testing that you really are using in your clinic?
So I obviously use the standard blood tests, but I would look at optimal ranges rather than the conventional ranges. I also do food sensitivity testing and something called an organic acids test. So that it uses a urine sample to look at the metabolites in the urine to gauge things like vitamin status, bacteria, yeasts, etc. And then also hormonal panels. So I find hormonal panels as well very useful at looking at the different type of estrogens, cortisol function, things like that. So I do a clinical imbalances series of seminars. The next one probably won't be until September 2025. And so if anyone's interested in that, to contact the Irish School of Homeopathy. So the idea of those seminars is to look at holistic models of pathophysiology. So a little bit what we've been talking about here. T4 is a pro-hormone, T3 is the active hormone. So we go into that. And then I also look at how to read standard blood tests in terms of what's optimal rather than what's just conventionally accepted. And then we also look at how to integrate that into your homeopathic practice. So, okay, if the thyroid's not functioning, what therapeutic and organ support remedies can we use? So it's quite a practical course as well in terms of implementing it.
It seems so unfair that you've just teased us with that and now we have to wait a whole year before we can do that. But that sounds really brilliant because when I do look at blood tests, they always give us the ranges on there, but I know that that's not the optimal ranges, that I don't know them off the top of my head. So that is something that I would like to learn a bit more. I rely heavily on the oligoscan, but it would be good to know a little bit more about the blood testing as well. So that's great that you do that. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about the Irish School of Homeopathy? So you obviously studied there, but then when did you start lecturing there and what's your role there? And I had a look there, they do a day course or you can do the 4-year practitioner course. It looks like there's a few different things that they offer.
As I said, I think it is one of the longest running homeopathic schools in the world now. We do a really wonderful introductory workshop. So for anyone who would just like to be a home prescriber, or they're interested in homeopathy, but they're not sure if they want to do the full leap, we offer some introductory workshops. And then we obviously have the 4-year professional course as well. I am an academic director with the school. I've been in various roles over the years. So I was the 3rd-year director for a number of years. So that would involve supervising the clinics and supervising the class. And then next year, I will hopefully be involved in what we're looking at for a 5th and 6th year now. So it's postgraduate years. So we've realized that graduates after 4 years want to continue their studies. So we're looking at implementing a 5th and 6th year, post-graduation 5th and 6th year, where we will be doing things like clinical imbalances, provings, and things like that.
That sounds amazing because so many, and I think you'll have a longer retention rate of people actually becoming practicing homeopaths, because I did 4 years as well in New Zealand, and you leave after that 4 years and you're like, oh, I'm all alone now. And so just being held that little bit longer while you're establishing your practice, I think is a very smart idea, because out of our cohort of students in New Zealand, there's only 1 or 2 of us still practicing. So that would be really good from that point of view, just holding people a little bit longer, because it's a hard job that we do. We get presented with some pretty gnarly things day in and day out, and having that safe space to land, I think is really important. So that's a great idea. Now, can you tell us a little bit as well about, and this is the part I'm really super excited about, is the YinYang remedy. So what inspired you to do that? And actually, I just have to say, when we were in Bali week before last, YinYang came up a couple of times because if you look at it, it looks like a sound wave as well. And dragons came up and all sorts of other things that formed this kind of pattern. It was really interesting when you look at it that way. But what was the inspiration behind that?
So I've been fascinated by the concept of YinYang since I traveled in Indonesia back in my 20s. And I was thinking of studying traditional Chinese medicine. So it's such a universal concept, and we see the principles all around us. We have this waxing and waning of these 2 polar energies. And when one or other of these energies reaches a critical stage, it spontaneously transforms into the other one. And we see that in homeopathy as well. So if you look at the relationship between chronic and acute remedies in homeopathy. So for example, if you have somebody who needs calc as a chronic remedy, if they go into an extreme calc state, and calc would be quite about inertia, which is quite a yin energy. So if calc goes into an extreme state, it can transform into a belladonna acute. And belladonna is all about mania, which is quite a yang energy. And if that acute is allowed to resolve appropriately, the person returns to a more balanced calc state. So that's an example of yin transforming into yang in an attempt to gain greater balance or harmony. And we see the same with silica and pulsatilla. Silica would be quite fixed, so that's quite a yang energy. And then an extreme silica can transform into a pulsatilla acute. and pulsatilla is quite a yin energy. So again, we have extreme of yang transforming into yin in an attempt to reach a more balanced state. So that yin-yang concept and principles, it's so universal. It really struck me as being applicable to everything. And I had been interested in it for a while, but wasn't sure if it was even possible to make a remedy from it. And I think many years ago, when I looked at Masuro's work, and more recently Veda Austin's, it really inspired me to think, yes, this can be done. I did a blind proving here with the 8C in Ireland, and then subsequently with the 34C with an international group. And I want to say a very big thank you to all of the provers involved who gave such wonderful enthusiasm and awareness to the proving. Fantastic.
And why 8C?
When I was potentizing the remedy, first of all, 8 is quite an important number in Chinese culture. It's also part of the Fibonacci series. But by the time I had potentized it to 8C, it felt to me like such a big energy. I thought, let's start here. I was in a very altered state after potentizing to 8C. So I thought, let's start here and see what this does before going any higher.
Right. And can you tell us some of the themes of the remedy?
Yeah. So one theme that came up was this idea of spiritual connection and disconnection. So a number of the provers experienced this increased connection to spirit, Newman, God, divine love, the energy of nature, whatever it meant to that person. And one prover described it like having a spiritual army at her back. And that actually continued after the proving was over. And the night after I made the 8C, I had this very vivid dream where someone I knew was getting injected through the corner of their eye with a large syringe into the center of their skull. Now, my interpretation of that, and it is subjective, is that the mRNA shot damages the pineal gland and our spiritual connection. And I have heard a number of people say that after the mRNA shots, they felt less connected to their spirituality or their religion or to their energetic connections. And interestingly, I've recently had 2 unusual cases, late 40s and 50s, no previous history of substance abuse. And after the mRNA shots, quite quickly developing alcohol dependency to the extent that they needed to go to rehab. And I know alcoholism is often a condition that's associated with a spiritual aspect. And Carl Jung described alcoholism as a spiritual thirst, where the person was seeking spiritual unity. So I wonder, is the mRNA damaging the pineal gland, damaging that spiritual connection? Because as we know, the pineal gland doesn't just secrete melatonin. We believe, although it is a bit contentious, that it does secrete DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is referred to as the spirit molecule, which is an important part of our spiritual connection and also very important in the transition from this life to the next. So it seems to be an aspect of the mRNA gel.
That's very interesting because sometimes you hear things in clinic and you think, I can't make this stuff up. But I had a client who works in childcare, and she told me that after she had the jab, she lost all her empathy. So kids would be crying, hurting themselves, and there was no empathy there. It was gone. And we did a vaccine detox with her, and she said she felt the empathy come back. And I'm just like, I can't make this stuff up. I mean, people are telling me this. What am I supposed to do with that information? Like, somebody had empathy, they lost it after the jab. I gave them a remedy made from the jab and the empathy is back. That's what a client has told me. So what do you do with that information? It's actually really scary. Very, very scary. And the amount, I think we mentioned this before we start recording, but I have never heard of so many suicides in my life. There are suicides left and center. It feels, apart from all the turbo cancers that happening and young people falling dead from heart attacks left and center, suicide rates, it would be really interesting to see statistics worldwide of what suicide rates are like. But people of all ages, it's very disturbing.
It's a very destructive, I don't even think we should call it a vaccine because It's experimental gene manipulation, but it's incredibly destructive. It's in homeopathic terms, it's very syphilitic in nature. So it's really pushing a self-destruct button for people, whatever that's, whether it's physical pathology or more mental and emotional pathology, it seems to be pushing a self-destruct button.
So are you saying that this yin-yang remedy might help with that?
Yeah, so I've started to use it in clinic. Now it's early days, but I'm seeing some nice results. There was one man I gave it to recently, and previously he would have been very energetically connected. He had a very natural tendency to be able to connect with other people's energies, and he had lost that sense in recent years. So I gave him just 8C split dose, so just morning and evening, just a one-off. And I spoke to him about a month later, and he said that energetic connection was back. But not only was it was back in a more balanced way. So he said before, when he would get in touch with people's energies, he'd almost get lost in theirs. So he wouldn't know where the boundary was. Whereas he said now it was back, but also in a more boundaried way. So he could still have a sense of himself while connecting to other energies. So that was lovely. And then an unexpected result was he had quite bad dermatitis on his hands, and it significantly improved with the yin-yang as well. So that was a nice plus on that one. Yeah.
That is beautiful. Just for our homeopaths listening to this who are scratching their brain about how they can help their clients with vaccine injuries, specifically from the COVID vaccine, Danitza Appeline also uses the remedy she created, Golden Spiral, because that just helps to restructure things. So it's great that we've got these tools up our sleeve that we, when you've tried everything, you just feel, okay, I don't know what else to give this client. Then you've got yin-yang, we've got Golden Spiral, we've got the vaccine in potency, which initially I was a little bit hesitant to use. I just felt a little bit off using it. But I've had such great results over the 3 years now that we've been treating vaccine injury from the mRNA vaccines. I've had such amazing results that now I just love using it and have had really good results. I won't lie. The first time I used it, I was like, oh, I don't know, there's nanoparticles and this and that. But just like thinking it through, it's succussed beyond the point of recognition. There's only energy medicine. And then more importantly, seeing the clinical results. That has given me a lot of confidence in using it. But having other options, I also like to use the remedy made from DNA and RNA. That's one I use quite often, and Golden Spiral. And now we've got yin-yang as well. So it's great having all of these tools that we can use.
Yeah, I use the mRNA injection in potency as well. Absolutely. So many of my clients need that detox. So yes, I would use that in potency as well, from 30C all the way up to 10M. So I do a protocol using all of the potencies, 30, 201M, 10M, alongside syphilinum, 30, 200, 30, 201M, 10, and then whatever indicated remedies. So many people need it, and I've seen such great results from it, including a child on the spectrum whose mum received the mRNA shot while she was pregnant. And I had been working with him for a little while, and he was coming along lovely. And then we did the detox with him, and he jumped to a whole new level from the mRNA detox.
So amazing. So amazing. Wow. We're so lucky to do this job. Hey, it's such a privilege. And I always think I was so lucky to have all these tools up our sleeve. Like I feel it doesn't matter how dire a case is, or sometimes how long you've been trying to help a client. I've never felt like I've run out of ideas. Like we always have, there's always more remedies and more different ways that we can prescribe. And when you have another tool up your sleeve, like the Feldenkrais and the nutritional therapy and all that sort of stuff, it just makes you such a powerful practitioner that's able to do such amazing work. It's really great.
Yeah, I think you can tailor the treatments then more specifically for the client.
Absolutely. Yeah, how long have you been teaching at the Irish School?
So 20 years now.
Really? Really?
Actually, yeah, over probably closer to 22 years now.
Wow. Okay. So tell me a little bit about the trends of what you've been seeing with students coming through, because it feels like there's a little bit of a homeopathic revolution happening at the moment. Have you seen that in your college, or what have the intake numbers been like over the years, or the kind
they're
of
going
vibration that you've had?
So when I trained, my class was very large. I think there was about 40 of us, which would have been a large number for the class at the time. So it's done the yin-yang waxing and waning, but I think its numbers have come up again this year. So I do think there is a resurgence. I also think just the world is changing at a very accelerated rate now. I think more people are interested in energy medicines, and people who I would never have heard talk about energy before are talking about it. And I also think that's why remedies like Golden Spiral, YinYang, some of the intentional remedies that Ambika's group have been working with, I think that's why they're coming in now, is because I think we're ready for them. And that's why we're working with these C5, C6s, triturations, etc. I remember many years ago when I was at the homeopathic conference, this is going back over 20 years ago, I heard Elise Timmerman speak, and she had just started to work with C4 and C5 triturations at that stage. And she told this story about Margaret Tyler, who had been on an island with these soldiers, and she ended up doing an extra trituration. So up until that point, it was primarily triturations to C3. And she ended up doing an extra trituration while on this island. And whatever came out of it, she wouldn't speak about it because she said the world wasn't ready for it at that time. But obviously now we are.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. It's interesting because just before you today, I interviewed Sarah Cotman on the meteorite remedies that she's proved, but obviously her episode now would be, by the time this one comes out, would be last week, Monday. And it's interesting, I was saying to her as well, it's interesting that these meteorite remedies started coming through like 2020-ish, although the shungite, which apparently it's not sure whether it's a meteorite or not, but that came out in 2017. Moldavite was 2020, and then they redid shungite and some of the other meteorites. So it's really interesting the timing of when a remedy decides to be born.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. And also, yeah, once again with the triturations, like the Paul Terrio's taken triturations up to, I think it was a C52 or something like that he did with his own blood. So there's some cool stuff happening at the moment. It's a really exciting time to be alive. And we'll probably talk about this on the podcast at some stage, but we ended up doing a bit of a spontaneous proving of lotus at the Bali conference. And there was this Balinese traditional healer who ended up driving all around the island to find us 4 or 5 different colors of lotus flowers. And we ended up doing a trituration on the spot. But it ended up being not quite a trituration because like 2 minutes into triturating, and I was note keeping, there was about 20 of us, the 2 ladies that were triturating, Angelica and Rita, they were both like, we cannot destroy this beautiful flower. We just cannot do it. And they ended up adding the holy water that was blessed by what's called the manku, the traditional healer. They ended up adding this water to the bowl, but there was no trituration at all. And you just felt us going through the layers as the water was added over a period of a couple of hours. And I just feel like we've birthed a whole new way of proving remedies. So I don't even know what we call that. It wasn't a trituration. It was 2 minutes of triturating and then some weird stuff happened. But everyone was so involved in this proving, and it's going to be really interesting, like integrating all of this and seeing how that goes. But it was pretty surreal and really cool. And I just feel like maybe that's a whole new way, because for a while I've been feeling, and I mentioned on the podcast before, when we did the castor root proving, it struck me that it felt very in the masculine, the way we were doing it, like 7 minutes of grinding, 3 minutes of scraping, 7 minutes of grinding, 3 minutes scraping. It felt very mechanical. And I just felt that it would be nice to have a little bit more intuition coming into it. That the substance actually has a say in how it wants to be brought to the world. I wasn't quite expecting what happened in Bali. That was like next level stuff that was happening there, but I do think it's part of the lotus flower. And yeah, so we'll see what comes out of this. And at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. And once the remedy has been made, giving it to our clients and seeing what clinical results we get is always, at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters.
Yeah. And with the YinYang remedy, I'd love to hear other people's experiences with it. I've started to use it in a variety of ways. So I would also love to get any feedback from people who start using it. I think it might be very good as well for things like unblocking creative blocks or creative procrastination, because that's something that came up in the proving. A lot of creativity was released, this idea of getting creative ideas out into the world, which I think is something that will be very timely for what's happening in the world now, is for people to be able to step into their creativity fully and to not be procrastinating on these ideas. And also in the area of sex hormones. So that might be another area as well that it potentially could be used in. So female hormone balance, libido, menopause, menstrual complaints. So if anyone starts using it in these areas, I'd love to get some feedback and hear how you're getting on. There's a little bit of information on the remedy on my website already, and I'm hoping to release more of the information on the proving shortly.
Wow. So maybe just tell us, give us a final little message that you want to leave our listeners with and where they can get hold of you.
So my website is theresecosgrove.com. So that will give information on my homeopathic practice, nutritional therapy, and Feldenkrais. And there's also a little bit of information on the YinYang remedy on there. And the remedy is currently available from Roots and Wings Dispensary. And I also teach with the Irish School of Homeopathy, if you'd like to have a look at their website as well. We have a lovely 4-year course and also some interesting workshops and postgrads coming up as well. So have a look at that. And I do have a new proving that I'm about to start, but I can't say too much about that at the moment.
I know.
But I might be sending you some information on people that might be good for you to talk to in terms of where the remedy was sourced.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
That
I think you'll be very interested, but I just can't say too much at the moment.
You got me so curious now. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Therese. It was lovely to connect with you. And yeah, I hope I get to see you at a conference in the near future somewhere in the world.
Yes, it would be lovely to actually meet in person. And thank you so much.
Such a pleasure. Bye.